Admiral Vextar stood on the observation deck of the neutral station, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. Through the massive transparent wall, 5 enormous warships floated in perfect formation against the backdrop of stars. Each ship stretched over 1 kilometer in length, their hulls gleaming with polished metal that reflected the light of the nearby star. The Zephyrian battleships were works of art as much as they were weapons of war. Their curved hulls flowed like water, designed by master craftsmen who understood both beauty and function. Weapon ports lined their surfaces like jewels, each one capable of unleashing destruction that could burn continents. Energy shields shimmered around each vessel, creating rainbow patterns in space-time behind the admiral. Representatives from dozens of alien species watched the display with appropriate awe. The insectoid klaxons clicked their mandibles in approval, their compound eyes reflecting the light from the ships. The ethereals, beings of living crystal, chimed softly as they communicated among themselves in their musical language. Near them, the amphibious tidal lords swayed gently, their tentacles moving in rhythm with some unheard melody. "Behold the future of galactic order," Admiral Vextar announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. His species, the Zephyrians, had ruled this sector for 300 years. Their empire stretched across 40 star systems, and these 5 ships represented the newest addition to their fleet. The Admiral turned to face his audience. His reptilian features showed confidence and pride. Each of these vessels carries enough firepower to destroy a planet's surface. Together, they represent the largest concentrated force in known space. He paused, letting the words sink in. Any species that values peace would be wise to remember this demonstration. The message was clear, though never stated directly. The Zephyrian Empire was expanding, and resistance would be met with overwhelming force. Several of the alien observers shifted uncomfortably. Their own worlds lay along the planned expansion routes, and they understood what the display really meant. A younger Zephyrian officer approached the Admiral with careful steps. Lieutenant Kessara wore the green uniform of the Communications Corps, and her scales showed the nervous color changes of someone about to interrupt a superior. "Admiral," she said quietly, "we have received a transmission from the Outer Rim territories." Vextar's head turned sharply. "Which system?" "The Sol system, sir. The humans." The lieutenant's voice carried a note of confusion. "They are requesting permission to observe our demonstration." A ripple of interest passed through the assembled representatives. The humans were new to galactic politics, having achieved faster than light travel only 50 years ago. Most species considered them a curiosity more than a threat. Their technology seemed primitive compared to the elegant solutions developed by older civilizations. The Admiral considered the request. Human space lay directly in the path of the next phase of Zephyrian expansion. Their worlds were rich in resources that the Empire needed. The humans had been polite in their initial contacts, but politeness meant little when territory was at stake. "How far away is their vessel?" Vextar asked. "Approximately 2 hours at their current speed, sir." They identified their ship as the USCS Indomitable. One of the klaxon representatives chittered in what passed for laughter among their species. The humans named their ships like they are planning to fight the galaxy. The alien translated through his mechanical voice box. "Let them come," the Admiral decided. "It will be educational for them to see what real naval power looks like." He turned back to the observation window. "Perhaps seeing our strength will save us all the unpleasantness of a military conflict later." The lieutenant bowed her head and returned to her duties. Around the observation deck, the various alien representatives began quiet conversations among themselves. The humans were about to get a lesson in galactic realities. Intelligence reports on human technology painted a clear picture. Their ships were crude constructs of metal and chemical propulsion. Where other species had learned to work with exotic matter and energy manipulation, humans still relied on brute force solutions. Their vessels looked like flying boxes compared to the organic curves favored by more advanced civilizations. Admiral Vextar had seen the intelligence images. Human warships appeared to be built in shipyards rather than grown in biotanks or crystallized from pure thought like the ships of other species. They used ballistic weapons instead of energy beams, and their armor was simple metal alloy rather than adaptive smart matter. Primitive, he murmured to himself, though not without a certain respect. Any species that achieved space travel deserved recognition, even if their methods were crude. The 2 hours passed quickly. The alien representatives used the time to network among themselves, discussing trade agreements and political alliances. Several of the smaller species approached the Zephyrian delegation to discuss protection treaties, clearly influenced by the display of military might. Finally, Lieutenant Kessera returned. "Admiral, the human vessel has arrived at the edge of our sensor range. They are requesting docking coordinates. Grant them permission to park alongside our demonstration fleet," Vextar ordered. "Let them get a close look at what advanced naval engineering achieves." The sensor displays activated, showing the approaching human ship as a small dot on the tactical screen. As it drew closer, the resolution improved, and details became visible. The human vessel was roughly the same size as a Zephyrian battleship, but the similarities ended there. Where the Zephyrian ships curved and flowed, the human vessel was all angles and flat surfaces. It looked like it had been assembled from geometric blocks rather than sculpted by artists. The hull appeared to be simple metal, dark, and utilitarian. No elegant weapon ports were visible, just what looked like cargo bays and communication arrays. "Interesting design philosophy," commented one of the ethereal representatives, its crystal body ringing with harmonic frequencies that indicated curiosity. Admiral Vextar studied the approaching ship with professional interest. It certainly looked different from anything in the galactic database. The humans had clearly taken a very practical approach to ship construction. Function over form, he supposed. Not beautiful, but perhaps effective in its own crude way. The human ship moved with steady confidence toward the formation of Zephyrian battleships. Its course was direct and efficient, showing competent navigation skills. Soon, the observers would meet their first human starship captain and learn what this young species had to say for itself. The demonstration was about to become much more interesting. The debate began almost immediately after Admiral Vextar granted the humans permission to approach. Not all of the alien representatives agreed with allowing this unknown species to observe their military demonstration. Commander Zephok of the Klaxon delegation chittered his objections through his translation device. "We know nothing about human intelligence gathering capabilities," his mechanical voice announced. "Allowing them to observe our newest warships could compromise security protocols." The Admiral's scale shifted to a deeper shade of green, showing mild irritation. "Commander, our intelligence reports indicate that human technology lags behind ours by at least 2 centuries. What could they possibly learn from observation that would threaten us?" One of the ethereal representatives chimed in with crystalline tones that the translation systems rendered as concern. "The wisdom of ages suggests caution when dealing with unknown variables. The humans have been space-capable for only 50 of their years, yet they have achieved faster than light travel. This suggests either great luck or hidden capabilities." Admiral Vextar considered this point. The humans had indeed achieved interstellar travel remarkably quickly after their first chemical rockets left their home planet. Most species required centuries to develop the theoretical framework for faster-than-light physics. Yet humans had managed it in just decades. "Perhaps they received outside assistance," suggested one of the tidal lords. its tentacles weaving patterns that indicated thoughtful analysis. Other species have guided developing civilizations before. The humans may simply be following copied technology rather than innovating. This explanation satisfied most of the observers. It was common for older species to share basic technologies with newcomers, usually in exchange for resources or political agreements. The humans had probably received help from some other civilization and were now using borrowed knowledge. Lieutenant Cassara approached the group again, her communication equipment active. "Admiral, the human vessel is transmitting additional information." They identify their commanding officer as Captain Sarah Chun, and they request coordinates for packing alongside our demonstration fleet. "Packing," repeated Commander Zifok with another chittering sound. Their terminology lacks the dignity appropriate for a military encounter. Admiral Vextar found the human directness almost refreshing after years of diplomatic language. "Grant them coordinates. Position them at the end of our formation where they can observe without interfering." As the human ship drew closer, the detailed sensor readings became available to the assembled observers. The data appeared on multiple displays around the observation deck, showing the vessel from every angle. The more they learned about the human ship, the more primitive it appeared. The hull was indeed simple metal alloy, nothing more sophisticated than processed iron and carbon compounds. No adaptive armor that could respond to different types of attacks. No smart matter plating that could repair itself. Just basic protection that any species might use in their early spacefaring years. The propulsion system used fusion reactors. A reliable but old-fashioned technology the most advanced species had abandoned centuries ago. Fusion was safe and dependable, but it lacked the power-to-weight ratio of more modern solutions like zero-point energy extraction or quantum vacuum manipulation. "Look at their weapon systems," pointed out one of the technical observers, a crystalline being whose species specialized in engineering analysis. They appeared to be using kinetic projectile launchers. "Ballistic weapons." The other representatives studied the tactical display with something approaching disbelief. Kinetic weapons represented the most basic form of space combat technology. Every species used them in their early military development, but advanced civilizations had long since moved to energy-based weapons that were more efficient and more destructive. Perhaps they have not yet discovered plasma confinement techniques, suggested a tidal lord with what might have been sympathy. Their energy science may be limited to simple atomic fusion. Admiral Vextar examined the weapons data with professional interest. The human ship mounted what appeared to be magnetic acceleration systems for launching projectiles. Railguns, according to the database. The technology was sound, but represented a brute force approach to ship-to-ship combat. Energy weapons could be adjusted for different targets and situations. Plasma beams could be focused or dispersed depending on whether the target was armored or shielded. Particle cannons could penetrate most known defenses. Gravity weapons could attack the very structure of space-time around an enemy vessel. Kinetic weapons just threw pieces of metal very fast and hoped they hit something important. Effective within certain parameters, the Admiral admitted to himself, but lacking flexibility and sophistication. The human ship continued its approach, maintaining steady communication with the station's traffic control systems. Captain Chun's voice came through the translation systems with a clear, professional tone that reminded Vextar of his own junior officers. Competent, but obviously working with limited resources. "Human vessel indomitable to Kepler Station," the transmission said. "We are beginning final approach to assign coordinates. Thank you for allowing us to observe your demonstration." Earth Command is always interested in learning about different approaches to naval architecture. Several of the alien observers found this amusing. The humans wanted to learn about naval architecture while flying in what amounted to a space-going cargo hauler. It was like a primitive trying to understand advanced mathematics while counting on their fingers. But as the human ship drew closer, something in the sensor readings began to puzzle the technical specialists. The energy signatures were not quite what they expected from a simple fusion-powered vessel. There were power readings that did not match the known capabilities of human technology. Lieutenant, Admiral Vextar called to his communications officer. "Are our sensors functioning properly? These energy readings seem inconsistent." Cassara checked her displays carefully. "All sensor systems are operating within normal parameters, Admiral. However, the human vessel does appear to be generating more power than their fusion reactors should be capable of producing. Perhaps they have improved their reactor efficiency," suggested one of the technical observers. "Fusion technology can be optimized beyond the basic theoretical limits with proper engineering." This seemed reasonable. Every species found ways to improve their early technologies as they gained experience. The humans have probably discovered some engineering tricks that allowed them to extract more energy from their primitive reactors. Still, something about the readings bothered the Admiral. The power distribution patterns were unusual. Instead of the steady, even flow expected from a fusion reactor, the human ship showed energy spikes and variations that suggested something more complex was happening inside that utilitarian hull. "Sir," Lieutenant Cassara announced, "the human vessel has reached the designated coordinates and is taking position at the end of our formation." Through the observation deck's transparent wall, the human ship was now visible to the naked eye. It hung in space like a dark rectangle among the curved elegance of the Zephyrian battleships. The contrast was striking. 5 beautiful works of art and engineering alongside one crude box of metal and determination. "Signal Captain Chun that she is welcome to observe our demonstration," Admiral Vextar ordered. "Perhaps seeing what advanced naval engineering can accomplish will prove educational." The stage was set. The most powerful battle fleet in the galaxy hung in formation, ready to display their capabilities. One primitive human ship waited at a respectful distance, presumably hoping to learn something from their technological superiors. Admiral Vextar had no idea that the real education was about to begin. The USCS Indomitable settled into position at the end of the Zephyrian formation with careful precision. Captain Sarah Chun's ship looked completely out of place among the flowing curves and elegant lines of the alien battleships. Where the Zephyrian vessels resembled living creatures or works of sculpture, the human ship looked like what it was, a military vessel built for function rather than beauty. From the observation deck, the alien representatives could now see the human warship in detail. Its hull was dark gray metal, broken by regular patterns of armor plating and weapon ports. Instead of the smooth surfaces favored by advanced civilizations, the human ship showed clear signs of being assembled from separate components. Seam lines were visible where different sections had been joined together. "It looks like they built it in pieces and welded them together," observed Commander Zefok, his mandibles clicking with what might have been amusement. The ethereal representative chimed thoughtfully. "Their construction methods appear to prioritize repairability over elegance. Each section could presumably be replaced individually if damaged." Admiral Vextar studied the human vessel with professional interest. It was certainly different from anything in his experience, but he could appreciate the practical approach to design. The ship might not be beautiful, but it looked solid and dependable. A new transmission came through the communication systems. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the USC's Indomitable. Thank you for allowing us to observe your demonstration. We apologize for arriving during what appears to be a military exercise." The voice was calm and professional. speaking in the common galactic language with only a slight accent that marked it as belonging to a species, learning the tongue as adults rather than growing up with it. Admiral Vexstar found himself impressed by the human's command of diplomatic protocol. "Captain Chun," the Admiral responded directly. "Welcome to Kepler Station. I am Admiral Vexstar of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. You have not interrupted an exercise, but rather arrived at an excellent time to witness a demonstration of advanced naval capabilities." There was a brief pause before Captain Chun responded. "Thank you, Admiral. Earth Command would be very interested in observing different approaches to fleet operations. We are always eager to learn from more experienced civilizations." The admission of inexperience brought knowing looks among the alien observers. At least the humans understood their place in the galactic hierarchy. This Captain Chun seemed properly respectful of her betters. "Indeed," Admiral Vexstar replied, warming to the idea of providing education to this young species. "Perhaps this demonstration will prove instructive regarding the realities of modern naval warfare." He turned to address the assembled representatives on the observation deck. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, you are about to witness the coordinated firepower of 5 Zephyrian battleships. Each vessel represents the finest in naval engineering, equipped with plasma cannons capable of breaching any known armor, antimatter torpedoes that can crack a planet's crust, and gravity manipulation weapons that can distort space-time itself." The technical specifications were impressive, and the Admiral could see their impact on his audience. Several of the smaller species representatives looked distinctly uncomfortable. The message was clear. This level of firepower was not something any reasonable civilization would choose to face in battle. "Captain Chun," Admiral Vexstar continued, opening the communication channel to the human ship, "you are about to observe weapons technology that represents centuries of advancement beyond your current capabilities. I trust you will find it enlightening." "I'm sure we will, Admiral," came the polite response. Human naval doctrine has always emphasized learning from other species' innovations. The response pleased Vexstar. The humans understood their position and were appropriately humble about their technological limitations. Perhaps the transition to Zephyrian control of human space would proceed more smoothly than some of his planners had predicted. "Excellent. Now observe." The Admiral activated his command transmitter. "All vessels, prepare for demonstration firing. Target the asteroid designated Alpha 7. Through the observation deck's massive windows, the alien representatives could see the 5 Zephyrian battleships beginning to rotate into firing position. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, each ship adjusting its attitude with precision that spoke of excellent training and advanced maneuvering systems. The target asteroid was clearly visible in the distance, a rough chunk of rock and metal about 2 kilometers across. It had been selected specifically for this demonstration because of its composition and size. Large enough to provide an impressive target, but small enough that its destruction would not create navigation hazards. "Each battleship will fire a coordinated salvo," Admiral Vexstar explained to his audience. "Plasma beams will weaken the target's structural integrity, followed by antimatter torpedoes to provide maximum destructive effect. The gravity weapons will then ensure complete dispersal of the debris." The weapon systems of all 5 ships began to charge. Energy readings spiked across the sensor displays as massive power supplies fed the advanced weapon arrays. The elegant hulls of the battleships began to glow with contained energy, creating a light show that was almost as impressive as the destruction they were about to unleash. "Fascinating weapon integration," Captain Chun's voice commented over the open channel. "Your energy management systems must be quite sophisticated to coordinate that level of simultaneous firepower." Admiral Vexstar found himself pleased by the human's technical interest. "Indeed, Captain. Proper fleet coordination requires advances in both individual vessel capabilities and fleet-wide communication systems. These ships represent the cutting edge of both fields. Very impressive, Chun agreed. Human ships take a rather different approach to fleet operations, but we're always interested in studying alternative methods. The comment struck several observers as presumptuous. What could humans possibly teach about fleet operations when they had been in space for barely 5 decades? Their entire civilization's space experience was shorter than the careers of some of the alien officers present. I would be curious to learn about human naval doctrine, Admiral Vextar said, though his tone carried polite skepticism rather than genuine interest. Perhaps after you observe our demonstration, you might share some details about your own fleet capabilities. Of course, Admiral. Though I should mention that human naval philosophy tends to emphasize different priorities than what I observe in your excellent vessels. Commander Zefok chittered quietly to his aide. Different priorities. What else could primitive technology emphasize besides making the best of limited capabilities? The Zephyrian battleships completed their targeting sequences. 5 of the most advanced warships in known space hung in perfect formation, their weapons locked onto a single asteroid. The combined firepower they were about to unleash could reduce a small moon to cosmic dust. All vessels report ready to fire, Lieutenant Kesara announced. Admiral Vextar looked around the observation deck at the assembled alien representatives, then activated his communicator to address Captain Chun. Captain, you are about to see what happens when advanced naval technology encounters resistance. I trust this will prove educational regarding the futility of opposing superior firepower. The threat was politely veiled, but every being on the observation deck understood its meaning. The Zephyrian Empire was demonstrating exactly what would happen to anyone foolish enough to stand in their way. Fire, Admiral Vextar commanded. The 5 Zephyrian battleships fired as one. The space around the target asteroid erupted in brilliant light as plasma beams lanced across the void. Each beam was a different color, representing different energy frequencies, designed to maximize damage against various types of matter. Blue-white beams focused on the asteroid's metallic components, while red-orange plasma targeted the rocky silicates. The plasma strike lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough to superheat the asteroid's surface and begin breaking down its molecular structure. Steam and vaporized metal created a glowing cloud around the target as the intense energy boiled away layers of material. Before the plasma beams had finished firing, the antimatter torpedoes launched. 5 sleek projectiles, each one containing enough antimatter to level a city, streaked toward the weakened asteroid. Their passage through space was marked by distortions in the sensor readings as their containment fields warped the fabric of reality around them. The torpedoes struck within milliseconds of each other. The antimatter met normal matter, and both ceased to exist in a flash of pure energy that briefly outshone the local star. The asteroid simply vanished in a sphere of expanding light and superheated plasma, but the demonstration was not finished. As the explosion began to fade, the gravity weapons activated. Space itself twisted around the blast zone as the Zephyrian ships manipulated gravitational fields with surgical precision. The expanding cloud of vaporized asteroid was caught in artificial gravitational currents and compressed, then dispersed, ensuring that no large debris would remain to pose a navigation hazard. The entire demonstration had taken less than 10 seconds. Where a 2-kilometer asteroid had existed moments before, there was now only a rapidly cooling cloud of glowing gas that would disperse completely within hours. The observation deck fell silent for several moments as the assembled representatives absorbed what they had just witnessed. The sheer scale of destruction was difficult to comprehend. Those 5 ships had just erased a mountain-sized chunk of rock and metal as easily as stepping on an insect. Commander Zefok was the first to speak, his mechanical voice translator conveying appropriate awe. Impressive coordination. The timing was perfect across all vessels. The ethereal representative chimed in harmonic frequencies that spoke of wonder and concern. Such power concentrated in so few vessels. The implications for galactic stability are significant. One of the smaller species representatives, a mammalian being whose world lay along the Zephyrian expansion route, simply stared at the dissipating cloud where the asteroid had been. The message was unmistakable. Resistance to the Zephyrian Empire would meet the same fate as that asteroid. Admiral Vexstar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The demonstration had proceeded flawlessly, and the political impact was exactly what he had hoped for. Several species that had been considering defensive alliances against Zephyrian expansion would now be reconsidering their options. "Captain Chen," the Admiral said, activating the communication channel to the human ship. "I trust you found our demonstration instructive regarding the capabilities of advanced naval technology." There was a brief pause before the human captain responded. "Quite impressive, Admiral. The coordination required for that level of simultaneous firepower must represent years of training and system integration. Your crews are clearly highly skilled." The professional appreciation in Captain Chun's voice pleased Vextar. The humans understood what they had seen and were appropriately respectful of superior capabilities. "Indeed," he replied. "Such coordination is only possible when vessels are equipped with the finest technology and manned by experienced crews. I imagine human naval capabilities are still developing towards such sophistication." "Human ships do take a different approach to fleet operations," Captain Chun admitted. "Our naval doctrine emphasizes different strengths than what I observed in your excellent demonstration." Commander Zefok chittered quietly to his companions. "Different strengths? What strengths could primitive kinetic weapons and fusion reactors possibly offer compared to antimatter, torpedoes, and gravity manipulation?" Admiral Vextar found himself genuinely curious about human military thinking. Any species that achieved interstellar travel had to possess some degree of competence, even if their technology was crude. Perhaps their limitations had forced them to develop interesting tactical innovations. "Captain Chun," he said, struck by an idea that would make this demonstration even more educational. "Perhaps you would be willing to share some details about human naval capabilities? I would be interested to see how your vessels approach combat challenges." The suggestion caused a stir among the alien observers. Several species exchanged glances that conveyed skeptical amusement. The humans were about to be asked to demonstrate their primitive weapon systems in front of the most advanced naval technology in the galaxy. "I would be honored to demonstrate human naval doctrine, Admiral," Captain Chen replied without hesitation. "Though I should mention that our approach tends to be somewhat different from the elegant solutions I just observed." "Excellent," Vextar said, warming to the idea. This would be the perfect capstone to the demonstration. After showing the assembled representatives what advanced technology could accomplish, they would see exactly how primitive human capabilities compared. The lesson about technological hierarchy would be complete. "Do you have a suitable target in mind?" Captain Chun asked. "I want to ensure that our demonstration is appropriate for the audience." Admiral Vextar consulted his navigation displays, looking for something that would provide an interesting challenge without being too easy. The asteroid had been destroyed too quickly to really showcase the differences between advanced and primitive weaponry. "There," he said, highlighting a target on the tactical display that was transmitted to all observing vessels. "The small moon at the edge of this system. Kepler 7c, I believe the designation is." The alien representatives turned their attention to the sensor readings for the suggested target. Kepler 7c was indeed small as moons went, roughly 800 kilometers in diameter. Dense composition, mostly iron and nickel with some rocky material. A solid target that would require significant firepower to damage meaningfully. An interesting challenge, Captain Chen acknowledged after a moment. Solid metallic composition, significant mass. May I ask what level of effect you'd consider a successful demonstration? The question brought smiles to several alien faces. The human captain was clearly trying to manage expectations, probably hoping that any visible impact on a moon's surface would be considered adequate. If your weapons can so much as scratch its surface, Captain, Admiral Vextar said generously, we'll be impressed. That moon has survived billions of years of asteroid impacts. It would take considerable force to mark it noticeably. Thank you for the opportunity, Admiral. Please stand by while we prepare for the demonstration. The communication channel closed, and the human ship began a slow rotation to bring its weapons to bear on the distant moon. From the observation deck, the aliens could see the USCS Indomitables, crude angular hull turning to present what appeared to be its dorsal surface toward the target. I wonder what they'll use, mused one of the technical specialists. Their railguns might be able to reach that distance, but the projectiles would have very little energy remaining by the time they arrive. Perhaps they have some form of missile system, suggested another observer. Chemical rockets with nuclear warheads could potentially cause some surface cratering. Admiral Vextar watched the human ship with professional interest. Whatever Captain Chen was planning, it would certainly be educational for everyone involved. The humans were about to learn exactly where they stood in the galactic hierarchy of military power, and perhaps, after this gentle humiliation, they would be more receptive to Zephyrian guidance in developing their civilization along proper lines. Target acquired. Captain Chun's voice announced calmly over the communication channel. Beginning firing sequence. Captain Sarah Chun's voice came through the communication systems with calm professionalism. Admiral Vextar, the Indomitable is ready to demonstrate human naval doctrine with a standard bombardment pattern. Thank you for providing such an excellent target. The alien observers gathered closer to the observation deck's massive windows, expecting another light show. After the spectacular display of Zephyrian firepower, they were curious to see what the primitive human weapons could accomplish. Most expected some surface scarring on the distant moon. Perhaps a few impact craters that would be visible on long-range sensors. The USC's Indomitable had completed its rotation, presenting its dorsal spine toward the target moon. Instead of elegant weapon ports like those on the Zephyrian battleships, a series of crude-looking hatches opened along the ship's backbone. What emerged were clearly kinetic weapon systems, but their design was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Magnetic rail acceleration systems, observed one of the technical specialists studying the sensor readings. Primitive but functional. They appear to be designed for launching simple projectiles at high velocity. Commander Zefok chittered with amusement. Kinetic weapons. They're going to throw rocks at a moon that has survived billion-year bombardment by natural asteroids. The ethereal representative chimed thoughtfully. Perhaps their approach emphasizes volume of fire over individual projectile effectiveness. Multiple impacts might achieve cumulative damage. Admiral Vextar watched the human ship with growing curiosity. The weapon systems did indeed look primitive, compared to Zephyrian plasma cannons, but there was something about their configuration that suggested careful engineering. The humans might be working with basic technology, but they appeared to understand how to optimize it. Firing. Captain Chun announced simply. The human ship launched its projectiles with none of the dramatic energy displays that had marked the alien demonstration. No brilliant beams of plasma, no exotic torpedoes trailing distortion fields, no gravity weapons bending spacetime. Just simple metal rods ejected from magnetic launchers with efficient, workmanlike precision. The projectiles themselves were barely visible. Small dark shapes that disappeared against the starfield almost immediately after launch. Their passage registered on sensors as tiny blips moving at tremendous velocity. But they seemed insignificant compared to the massive energy weapons the aliens were accustomed to. "Interesting approach," Admiral Vextar commented politely. "Kinetic weapons do have certain advantages in terms of reliability and simplicity." Several alien representatives exchanged amused glances. The Admiral was being diplomatically kind about what was clearly a demonstration of technological limitation. The humans were doing their best with the tools available to their primitive civilization. The projectiles streaked across space toward the distant moon. Their flight time measured in minutes rather than the seconds required by energy weapons. During the wait, the alien observers discussed what they expected to see. Perhaps a few new craters on the moon's surface. Possibly some debris ejected from the impact sites. Nothing that would significantly alter the celestial body. They were wrong. When the first projectile struck Kepler 7c, the impact flash was visible even at this distance. Not the brief flicker that might be expected from a simple kinetic strike, but a sustained burst of light that spoke of enormous energy release. "Impressive impact velocity," one technical specialist commented, studying his sensor readings with growing confusion. "Much higher than expected for simple railgun acceleration." The second projectile hit before anyone could fully process the first impact. Then the third, fourth, and fifth struck in rapid succession. Each impact created another brilliant flash, and the moon's surface began to show visible changes, even on the long-range optical displays. But something was wrong with the sensor readings. The energy release from each impact was far greater than the kinetic energy of simple metal projectiles should produce. The numbers didn't make sense unless... "Admiral," Lieutenant Kessera called out, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. "The projectile velocity readings, they appear to be traveling at a significant fraction of light speed." The observation deck fell silent except for the humming of life support systems. Admiral Vextar stared at the tactical displays, trying to understand what his sensors were telling him. Relativistic kinetic weapons. The humans were using relativistic kinetic weapons. On the distant moon, the impacts continued. Each projectile carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon, but focused into a point impact that could penetrate far deeper than any explosion. The moon's iron-nickel core, which had resisted billion years of natural bombardment, began to fracture under the stress of multiple relativistic impacts. "This is impossible," whispered one of the technical observers. "Accelerating projectiles to relativistic velocities requires enormous power systems. Their ship doesn't show energy generation capable of..." The sentence died as more impact flashes lit up the distant moon. Cracks became visible on its surface, spreading outward from the impact sites like a spider web of destruction. The moon was beginning to come apart. Commander Zefok had stopped chittering entirely, his compound eyes focused on the sensor displays that showed impossible readings. A moon that should have survived anything short of a direct antimatter strike was visibly disintegrating under kinetic bombardment. "Their power generation," Admiral Vextar said quietly, finally understanding what he was seeing. "We assumed it was primitive fusion technology because we recognized the signature. But the scale, they're not using simple fusion." The ethereal representative chimed in harmonic frequencies that spoke of shocked realization. "That energy signature. They're inducing controlled fusion reactions in their projectiles. They're not just throwing metal rods. They're launching fusion-powered kinetic penetrators at relativistic velocities." The implications hit the alien observers like a physical blow. The human ship that looked so crude and primitive was actually a mobile platform for weapons that could accelerate projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. Each simple metal rod carried the kinetic energy of a strategic weapon, delivered with the precision of a sniper rifle. On Kepler 7c, the structural failures reached critical mass. The moon's core cracked completely, and gravitational stress began pulling the fractured pieces apart. What had been a solid celestial body moments before was now a rapidly expanding debris field. Captain Chun's voice cut through the stunned silence on the observation deck. Target eliminated, Admiral. The Indomitable stands ready for further orders. Her tone was perfectly professional, as if destroying a moon was a routine operation. Which, Admiral Vexstar realized with growing horror, it probably was for human naval doctrine. They had built their ships not for elegant displays of exotic technology, but for the practical business of reducing any target to component atoms. "Captain," he managed to say, his voice carefully controlled. That was quite educational. "I'm glad you found it interesting, Admiral. Human naval engineering takes a somewhat different approach than your excellent vessels. We found that simple solutions often work best in combat situations." Simple solutions. Admiral Vexstar stared at the expanding cloud of debris that had once been a moon, beginning to understand exactly what human simplicity meant. Where other species had developed elegant plasma weapons and exotic antimatter torpedoes, humans had perfected the art of throwing rocks very, very fast and at relativistic velocities. Even rocks became weapons capable of cracking planets. The communication channel remained open, carrying the slight background hum of the human ship systems. Captain Chun waited politely for further questions or comments, apparently unaware that she had just redefined several alien species' understanding of military power. "Thank you for the demonstration, Captain," Admiral Vexstar said finally. "I believe we have all learned something valuable today." As word of the demonstration began to spread through subspace communication networks, military planners across the galaxy would be reconsidering their assessment of human naval capabilities. The species that looked so primitive had apparently skipped past energy, weapons entirely, and gone straight to kinetic. Systems so advanced that they could reduce moons to rubble. The human expansion into galactic politics was about to become much more interesting than anyone had anticipated. Admiral Vexstar looked out at the 5 most advanced battleships in the Zephyrian fleet, floating gracefully in formation with one angular human vessel that had just demonstrated the ability to destroy planetary bodies with simple metal rods. He was beginning to suspect that humanity's approach to naval warfare might be worth studying after all.